Mr. Ricardo, I have something to confess to you. The words came out of Carla Santos's mouth like a whisper filled with fear. Her hands were shaking as she held the cleaning cloth, and she couldn't look directly at Ricardo Monteiro, her boss for the past 8 months. Ricardo was sitting in his home office in his penthouse in Modama, reviewing contracts for Tech Solutions, his software company that generated $15 million a year, when he heard Carla's hesitant voice. He looked up from his MacBook screen and saw her standing in the doorway, visibly nervous. "What's wrong, Carla?" he asked, taking off his reading glasses. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Carla swallowed hard. At 32 years old, she had built a new life with tremendous effort, but she knew the time had come to tell the truth. She could no longer live with that weight on her conscience, especially since Ricardo had become more than just a boss. He was someone who treated her with respect and trust. "Mr. Ricardo, can I sit down for a minute? This is important." Ricardo closed his laptop, intrigued. In 8 months of work, Carla had never asked to talk about something personal. She had always been professional, discreet, efficient. She arrived punctually at 8 a.m., did her work impeccably, and left at 5 p.m. without causing problems. "Of course, sit down. Want some coffee? Water? No, thank you." Carla sat on the edge of the leather armchair, as if she were ready to run away at any moment. "Sir, what I'm about to say might change everything between us. You might want to fire me afterwards." Ricardo frowned, concerned. "Carla, you're scaring me. What happened? Did someone threaten you? Are you having problems?" "They're not current problems, sir. They're problems from my past that I never told anyone about." Carla took a deep breath, gathering all the courage she could find. "Mr. Ricardo, before working here, before being the Carla Santos you know, I did things I'm very ashamed of." Ricardo leaned forward, paying complete attention. Something in her tone indicated this was very serious. "When I was 19 years old, I lived on the outskirts of Osasco with my sick mother and my 2 younger brothers. My father had abandoned the family when I was 16, and my mother worked as a cleaning lady in 3 different houses, but the money was never enough." Carla's voice began to tremble as she relived painful memories. "My mother developed diabetes and needed expensive medications, insulin, blood pressure medicine, medical appointments. There came a time when she couldn't work properly anymore. She got weak, felt sick, and the boys needed school uniforms, supplies, food." Ricardo listened in silence, beginning to understand where the story was leading. "I worked at a small market in the neighborhood, earning minimum wage. With that money, I couldn't even buy my mother's insulin, let alone support the whole family." Carla paused, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "That's when I met some friends who had an easy way to make quick money. They talked about jobs that paid well, no questions asked, no complications." "What kind of jobs, Carla?" "Theft, Mr. Ricardo. They taught me to rob middle-class houses when the residents were traveling. They said it was non-violent, that it was just taking things people wouldn't even miss." The silence in the room became heavy. Ricardo processed the information, trying to reconcile the image of the exemplary employee he knew with what she was revealing. "At first I said I didn't want to," Carla continued, her voice getting lower and lower. "But when I saw my mother fainting from hunger and lack of medicine, when I saw my brothers aged 12 and 14 talking about dropping out of school to work, I accepted." She wiped the tears with the back of her hand. "I did this for 6 months, sir. I stole jewelry, electronics, money, always from empty houses, always without violence. I managed to buy my mother's medicines, pay for private school for my brothers, even renovate our house." Ricardo remained silent, but Carla could see in his eyes a mixture of shock and disappointment. "I convinced myself I was doing the right thing, that I was saving my family, but deep down I knew it was wrong. Every night I cried, hated myself, asked God for forgiveness. And what happened? How did you stop?" "I didn't stop by choice, sir. I was arrested." Carla closed her eyes, as if the memory still hurt her. "On the 6th time, the alarm went off. The family had returned from their trip early. The police arrived quickly and found me inside the house with a bag full of jewelry. My God, Carla, I was sentenced to 3 years in prison for aggravated theft. 3 years, Mr. Ricardo. 3 years away from my family, away from my brothers. I wanted so much to protect. Prison was hell, Mr. Ricardo. I was young, inexperienced, terrified. The other inmates called me Little Rich Girl because I had studied through high school, because I spoke properly." Ricardo listened, seeing a side of life he had never imagined. "In the first months, I cried every day. I received letters from my mother saying everything was fine, but I knew it wasn't. How could it be? The money I had gotten from stealing didn't last long, and she went back to struggling." "Did your brothers continue studying?" "No, they had to stop to work. Junior, who was 14, became an office boy. Marcos, 12, started helping at at a mechanic shop. Everything I had done to protect their future had been destroyed by my imprisonment. Carla paused to compose herself. It was in prison that I understood what I had really done, sir. I wasn't just stealing objects. I was stealing the peace of entire families. I was violating homes, destroying people's sense of security. And on top of that, I had abandoned my own family when they needed me most. How did you deal with that guilt? During the first year, I almost went crazy. I tried to fight with other inmates, got into trouble, went to solitary confinement several times. I was angry at the world, at myself, at God. And what changed? I met Sister Benedita, a nun who taught literacy classes in prison. She listened to me, didn't judge me, but also didn't coddle me. She told me I could choose, leave prison worse than I entered, or leave transformed. Sister Benedita put me to help with the literacy classes. I started teaching other inmates to read and write. Many of them came from situations worse than mine, never had the opportunity to study. Ricardo noticed that when talking about prison, Carla seemed to find some purpose in the experience. That's where I discovered I liked teaching, helping. A 45-year-old inmate cried when she managed to write her children's names for the first time. Another learned to do math in her head and realized her husband was lying about the family finances. Did this help you deal with the guilt? It didn't erase my guilt, sir, but it gave me a sense of purpose. I began to understand that I could use my bad experience to help other people. The sister also put me in a professional qualification program. I learned cutting and sewing, cooking, and professional cleaning. Ricardo raised an eyebrow. Yes, sir, it was in prison that I learned to clean properly. Seems ironic, doesn't it? The person who used to rob houses, learning to take care of them properly. Carla almost smiled, but the seriousness of the conversation brought her back. In the last 6 months of prison, I was already helping to administer the educational programs. Sister Benedita said I had a knack for organization, that I should consider going to college when I got out. When I got out, Mr. Ricardo, the outside world seemed like another planet. 3 years is a long time. My mother's diabetes had gotten worse. My brothers had grown and changed, and I didn't know who I was anymore. How did you manage to start over? At first, it was impossible. Every job interview I went to, they asked about criminal background. When I told the truth, they wouldn't hire me. When I tried to hide it, they found out in the pre-employment screening. Ricardo was beginning to understand the dimension of challenges that ex-convicts faced. I spent 6 months unemployed. I survived doing odd cleaning jobs, weekend work that paid daily rates. I earned 80 reais per day when I could find work. It must have been desperate. I thought about giving up several times, sir. There came a time when I thought, maybe it's easier to go back to crime. But then I remembered Sister Benedita, the women I had helped in prison, and I knew I couldn't disappoint them. That's when you decided to change your identity. Carla hesitated before answering. Not exactly change, sir, but I started using my maternal grandmother's name, who had died when I was a child, Carla Santos. My real name is Carla Silva dos Santos, so technically, it wasn't a complete lie. And how did you get documents? I found all my grandmother's documentation stored with my mother, old ID, birth certificate. I managed to get new documents as if I were her. It wasn't difficult because she had died a long time ago and never had a social security number or work permit. Ricardo frowned, worried about the legal implications. I know it was wrong, Mr. Ricardo. I know I've been living with false identity for 4 years, but it was the only way I found to start over. With Grandma Carla's documents, I got my first steady job at a cleaning company. I worked in commercial offices, buildings, stores. It was hard work, poorly paid, but it was honest. Ricardo listened, impressed by her determination. I stayed at that company for 2 years. I was always punctual, always did more than they asked, never caused problems. When the manager asked if I wanted to try domestic work, which paid better, I accepted. And that's how you got to me. Yes, sir. Through the agency. When Miss Marissa recommended me to work here, I was terrified. It was my first time working in someone's house since the robberies. Carla paused, emotional. On the first day here, when you showed me the house, explained the routine, treated me with politeness and respect, I almost cried right there. Why? Because it had been 4 years since I entered a beautiful house like this, and for the first time, I was entering through the front door as an honest employee, not as a thief. Ricardo felt something move in his chest hearing this. In the first month, sir, I had nightmares. I dreamed I was stealing again, that the police arrived, that you discovered my past and fired me. Why did you decide to tell me now? Carla took a deep breath before answering. Because in these 8 months working here, you became more than a boss. You treat me like a human being. Trust me. Let me take care of your house as if it were my own house. Tears returned to her eyes. Last week, when you left for a trip and gave me the house key, you said, Carla, I trust you to take care of everything. I couldn't lie anymore. I can't keep living knowing that your trust is based on a lie. Mr. Ricardo, I wake up every day at 5 a.m. and the first thing I think is, will he find out today? When I clean your valuable objects, I keep thinking that I've stolen similar things from other people. Ricardo remained quiet, processing everything he was hearing. When I organize your library, I see books about about ethics, morals, justice, and I feel like a fraud. When I prepare your dinner using your expensive appliances, I remember that I've stolen things like this from other families. Carla, let me finish, sir. I need to say everything now or I'll never have the courage again. She wiped her tears and continued. In these 8 months, you've given me more than a decent salary. You gave me back my dignity. You made me remember that I'm capable of working honestly, that I can be trustworthy. But you also made me realize the magnitude of the injustice I committed against those families I robbed. Because now I know what it's like to love your home, your objects, your personal space. I violated that for other people. Ricardo finally broke the silence. Carla, these families, do you know who they were? I do, sir. I kept all the addresses all these years. There were 5 houses. I remember each one, each object I took, each room I violated. And what do you intend to do with this information? I want to ask for forgiveness, sir. I want to return what I can, pay for what I can't return. I don't know how yet. I don't have money yet, but I want to take responsibility for my actions. Ricardo got up from his chair and walked to the window, looking down at São Paulo below. The silence stretched for minutes that seemed like hours to Carla. Carla, he finally said, still with his back turned. Can I ask you some questions? Of course, sir. In these 8 months working here, did you have the opportunity to rob me? The question caught Carla by surprise. Sir, you have access to my house, my valuable objects, my personal information. Did you have the opportunity to rob me? I did, sir. Many times. And why didn't you rob me? Carla thought about the answer. Because I'm not that person anymore, Mr. Ricardo. And because you didn't deserve that. Ricardo turned to look at her. Carla, do you have any idea what that watch I leave on the nightstand is worth? No, sir. 80,000 reais. And that painting in the living room, I don't know that either. 120,000. You had access to more than 500,000 reais in valuable objects all these months. Why did you never touch anything? Carla looked at him without understanding where he was going. Because those things aren't mine, sir. Because stealing is wrong. Because I learned. Learned what? That there's no easy money. That when we steal, we always lose more than we gain. That crime doesn't pay. Ricardo sat back down, but this time closer to her. Carla, do you know what the difference is between you and most criminals? No, sir. You truly repented. And more importantly, you truly changed. Mr. Ricardo, aren't you going to fire me? Asked Carla, incredulous. Fire you? Carla, I'm going to make you a proposal that could change your life. She looked at him without understanding. You said you want to ask forgiveness from the families you robbed, that you want to return what you can. Are you serious about this? Very serious, sir. It's what I want most in life. Then let's make this happen, together. Carla's eyes widened. How so? First, you're going to give me all the details of the robberies you committed. Addresses, objects, values. We'll make a complete list. Sir, but this could incriminate me again. Carla, you already served your sentence. And besides, we won't do anything illegal. We'll contact these families, explain the situation, and offer voluntary reparations. Ricardo got up and went to get a notebook. Second, you said you learned organization in prison, that you had a knack for administration. Is that true? Yes, sir. Sister Benedita always said that. Then you won't just work as a cleaning lady anymore. I'm going to promote you to administrative assistant for my companies, with an administrative assistant's salary. Carla couldn't believe what she was hearing. Sir, this can't be true. Why would you do this? Because I believe in second chances, Carla. Because you proved you truly changed. And because I need someone trustworthy to help me with a new project. What project? An institute to help ex-convicts reintegrate into society. You'd be perfect to coordinate this. In the following weeks, Ricardo and Carla worked together to identify and contact the families who had been victims of the robberies. It was a delicate and emotionally draining process. The first family, the Oliveiras, initially didn't even want to listen. When Ricardo explained that he represented someone who wanted to make voluntary reparations for robberies from years ago, there was distrust and anger. My wife was traumatized after the robbery, said Joana Oliveira during the phone call. She couldn't sleep peacefully in this house anymore. We had to move, do therapy, install security systems. What reparation will compensate for that? Ricardo looked at Carla, who was listening to the conversation with tears in her eyes. Mr. Joan, I understand your anger, and we know there's no way to completely undo the harm that was done. But the person who committed these crimes has changed, served their sentence, and genuinely wants to take responsibility for past actions. After much conversation, Joan agreed to meet with them. The meeting was devastating for Carla. Sitting in the living room of the Oliveira's new house, they had moved after the robbery. She heard how her action had profoundly affected the entire family. My 8-year-old daughter asked every day if the bad men were coming back, said Maria Oliveira, the wife. She slept in our bed for months. She needed child therapy. Carla cried silently. I'm sorry, she finally said. I know apologies don't change anything, but I need you to know that I regret it every day, and I want to do whatever possible to make amends. With Ricardo's financial help, Carla managed to make significant reparations to all 5 families, not only returning the value of stolen objects, adjusted for inflation, but also paying for emotional costs, therapy, security systems, house moves when necessary. For the Oliveira family, besides restitution of the $15,000 in stolen jewelry, which inflated to $22,000, Carla paid for their daughter's therapy sessions and contributed to the new house's security system. For the Santos family, whose computer and electronic equipment had been stolen, hurting the father's freelance work, she not only returned the value but paid for a technology update course for him. "This is more than we expected," said Carlos Santos. "We never imagined someone would come back to take responsibility like this." Each meeting with the families was a lesson in humanity for both Carla and Ricardo. 6 months after Carla's confession, Ricardo had officially established the Second Chance Institute, an organization to help ex-convicts in social reintegration. Carla was the executive coordinator. "Our mission," she explained in lectures to business people, "is to break the vicious cycle that turns ex-convicts into repeat offenders due to lack of opportunities." The Institute offered a mentorship program with business people, assistance with documentation and legal issues, mediation for voluntary reparation processes. "Carla," said Ricardo during a project evaluation, "do you have any idea of the impact we're causing?" "How so, sir?" "In 6 months, we've already helped 50 ex-convicts get jobs. The recidivism rate among our clients is only 5%, compared to the national average of 70%. Carla smiled, proud of the work she was developing. "But do you know which result I'm most proud of?" continued Ricardo. "Which one?" "Of the 5 families you robbed, 3 became donors to the Institute. They transformed their pain into a purpose to help others." 1 year after the confession, Carla had become a completely different person, not just from the criminal she had been at 19, but also from the terrified cleaning lady who had started working for Ricardo. "Carla," said Ricardo one afternoon, "I need to tell you something." "What is it, sir?" "Stop calling me sir. We're partners now." It was true. Ricardo had offered Carla a 20% stake in the Second Chance Institute, recognizing that she was fundamental to the project's success. "Ricardo," she said, still getting used to the informality, "sometimes I can't believe my current life." "Why?" 2 years ago, I was an unemployed ex-convict, living with false identity, desperate for any job. Today, I'm coordinator of an institute. I have my own apartment. I'm attending college for social work. And what's most importantly, today I sleep peacefully. I don't have nightmares anymore. I'm not afraid of being discovered anymore. I accepted who I am, accepted my past, and transformed it into a tool to help others. 2 years later, the Second Chance Institute had become a national reference in social reintegration of ex-convicts. Carla was invited to speak at universities, public safety conferences, and human rights seminars. "Brazilian society has a distorted view of ex-convicts," she explained in her presentations. "It's believed that once a criminal, always a criminal. This becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When society doesn't offer legal opportunities to start over, it pushes these people back to crime. It's a cycle that only benefits the prison system and harms everyone." Her lectures always included her own testimony, told in a raw but hopeful way. "I was a criminal. I robbed 5 houses. I spent 3 years in prison. I left there determined to change, but the world wouldn't give me a chance. If it weren't for a special person who believed in me, I probably would have returned to crime. Our proposal is simple. Give real opportunities to start over, not out of kindness, but because it's smart. Each reintegrated ex-convict is 1 less crime, 1 more family contributing taxes, 1 more person generating value for society." Carla had not only rebuilt her professional life, but also her personal life. She had reconnected with her mother, who was proud of her daughter's transformation, and her brothers. "Carla," said Junior, her youngest brother, now 24 and graduated in administration, "you know you're my hero, right?" "Hero, Junior, I was arrested for theft. Exactly because of that. You made a mistake, accepted the consequences, learned, changed, and now help others to change too. Isn't that what heroes do?" Marcos, the middle brother, had become a mechanic and owned his own shop. "Carla, remember when we were little and you stole to support us? As if I could forget. At the time I thought you were brave. Today I understand that real courage was what you did after, telling the truth to your boss, taking responsibility for the robberies, asking forgiveness from the families." Carla's mother, Donna Benedita, now with controlled diabetes and living in a house Carla had bought for her, always said, "My daughter taught me that no matter how deep you fall, it's always possible to get back up." The success of the Second Chance Institute caught the attention of the federal government. Carla was invited to join a national commission on prison system reform. Carla Santos said the Justice Minister during her inauguration to the Commission is a living example that social reintegration is not only possible but fundamental to reducing crime. Her proposals for the Commission were based on practical experience, partnerships with private companies to hire ex-convicts, continued psychological support after leaving prison, mediation programs for voluntary damage reparation, changes in legislation to facilitate social reintegration. We can't continue treating prison as a people warehouse, she argued. Prison needs to be a place of transformation, not just punishment. On a Sunday afternoon, Ricardo and Carla were in the Institute office, planning expansion to other states. Carla, can I ask you a personal question? Always, Ricardo. Have you forgiven yourself for what you did? The question caught Carla by surprise. She thought for several minutes before answering. For a long time, I thought forgiving myself would diminish the gravity of my crimes, as if it would disrespect the victims. And today I understand that self-forgiveness isn't about forgetting or minimizing. It's about accepting that I did terrible things, taking full responsibility, and using that experience to generate positive value in the world. Ricardo nodded. And the families you robbed? How do they feel today? 3 of them became our partners at the Institute. 1 still holds resentment, which I understand perfectly, and 1 family moved and we couldn't contact them anymore. Does that bother you? It saddens me, but I accept it. Some wounds are too deep. My responsibility is to continue doing good, regardless of others' forgiveness. 3 years after the confession in Ricardo's office, the Second Chance Institute had helped more than 500 ex-convicts reintegrate into society. The recidivism rate among clients was only 3%. Carla, said Ricardo during an awards ceremony where she received the title of Citizen of the Year, do you realize the impact of your decision to confess? How so? If you hadn't had the courage to tell me the truth, none of this would exist. 500 families would be in a different situation today. Carla looked at the audience full of ex-convicts who had rebuilt their lives, business people offering work opportunities, and families who had benefited from the Institute. Ricardo, do you know what the biggest lesson I learned was? What? That the truth really sets you free. It's not just a cliche. When I stopped living by lying about who I was able to become who I really could be. 5 years after that transformative confession, Carla Santos was one of the main references in social reintegration in Brazil. Graduated in social work with specialization in criminology, she had written a best-selling book, From Prison to Citizenship, My Journey of Redemption. Ricardo, who had become her best friend and business partner, often reflected on how a moment of honesty had changed so many lives. Carla, he said one afternoon, watching a class of ex-convicts graduate from their professional course, you